She was never the headline. While others soaked in the spotlight, she stood quietly in the wings. A supporting role, a soft voice. A face that people knew, but never really saw. Sabrina Carpenter wasn't the breakout star. Not at first. She didn't have the drama, the scandals, the viral moments. What she had was a notebook, a pen, and a heart that turned every unanswered question into a lyric. Behind every smile on red carpets, there were auditions she didn't get. Behind every Disney episode, there were dreams people told her were too big, or not her lane. For years she watched others rise. Some faster, some louder. And still she didn't quit. She kept writing, kept learning the business, kept showing up. She was the industry's quiet storm. And when the moment came, she didn't ask for the spotlight. She took it, with talent, with timing, and with terrifying honesty. Because Sabrina Carpenter didn't just want to be famous. She wanted to be heard. Now, the world is finally listening. If you've ever felt like you're working in the shadows, if you know what it's like to give your all while the world looks the other way, then Sabrina's story is yours too. This isn't just a tale about fame. It's about perseverance, reinvention, and claiming your space, even when no one's handing it to you. So if you're ready to stop waiting for permission, hit that follow button. Because on this channel we don't just share stories. We decode the blueprints behind real transformation. Let this be the moment you decide to keep building. Even when no one's clapping yet. She was never the headline. While others soaked in the spotlight, she stood quietly in the wings. A supporting role, a soft voice. A face that people knew, but never really saw. Sabrina Carpenter wasn't the breakout star. Not at first. She didn't have the drama, the scandals, the viral moments. What she had was a notebook, a pen, and a heart that turned every unanswered question into a lyric. Behind every smile on red carpets, there were auditions she didn't get. Behind every Disney episode, there were dreams people told her were too big, or not her lane. For years she watched others rise. Some faster, some louder. And still she didn't quit. She kept writing, kept learning the business, kept showing up. She was the industry's quiet storm. And when the moment came, she didn't ask for the spotlight. She took it, with talent, with timing, and with terrifying honesty. Because Sabrina Carpenter didn't just want to be famous. She wanted to be heard. Now, the world is finally listening. If you've ever felt like you're working in the shadows, if you know what it's like to give your all while the world looks the other way, then Sabrina's story is yours too. This isn't just a tale about fame. It's about perseverance, reinvention, and claiming your space, even when no one's handing it to you. So if you're ready to stop waiting for permission, hit that follow button. Because on this channel we don't just share stories. We decode the blueprints behind real transformation. Let this be the moment you decide to keep building. Even when no one's clapping yet. She was just a girl in a small Pennsylvania town, nestled between rolling hills and dreams too big to fit inside her childhood bedroom. Sabrina Carpenter wasn't born into fame. She wasn't born into a music dynasty or discovered on some flashy stage. Her rise, it was quiet, patient, built on a whisper of talent that only grew louder with every passing year. Sabrina grew up in Lehigh Valley, where the winters were long and the ambitions even longer. She was the youngest of 4 girls in a close-knit, loving family. Her father was a contractor, her mother a homemaker, and while the world outside often felt far away, inside the Carpenter household creativity was everywhere. Her older sisters played dress-up and sang into hairbrushes. But Sabrina, she took it one step further. She recorded herself singing with her dad's old camcorder. She'd rewatch the tapes, studying every note, every gesture. She was her own first critic, her own biggest fan. At just 10 years old, she set up a YouTube channel with the help of her parents and began posting covers of her favorite songs. She sang Adele, Christina Aguilera, Taylor Swift, songs far beyond her age, yet her voice carried depth, grit, and soul. Most kids at 10 are thinking about cartoons and recess. Sabrina was thinking about tone, breath control, and how to hit high notes with clarity. One of her videos caught the attention of a small circle online. Then it caught the attention of people in the industry. And before she knew it, she was auditioning for Disney Channel roles. Her parents, skeptical at first, began taking long drives to New York City and eventually to Los Angeles. They didn't know what the future held. But they knew their daughter had something special. At 12, she landed a few commercial gigs. Nothing huge. But it was enough to get her foot in the door. Enough to start building a reel. Enough to keep her going. Then came her first real break. A recurring role on Law and Order, SVU. It was just one episode. But for a young girl from Pennsylvania standing in front of a camera next to seasoned actors, it felt like the world had cracked open just a little. But Sabrina wasn't just chasing acting. Music, always, was her first love. She kept writing. In the back of the car. Between auditions. In notebooks she'd stuff in her backpack. She wrote about friendship. About heartbreak she hadn't experienced yet but felt deep in her bones. Her lyrics were raw but real. Honest. Observant. In 2014 everything changed. She was cast as Maya Hart in the Disney Channel show, Girl Meets World. A rebellious, funny, complex character who would soon become iconic for a new generation. The show gave her a platform. Millions of viewers. And more importantly, a studio deal. Hollywood Records saw something in her. Not just an actress who could sing but a true artist. They signed her. And Sabrina went to work. Her first single, Can't Blame a Girl for Trying, dropped in 2014. A playful pop tune that hinted at her charm, her youth, but also her storytelling potential. It wasn't a smash hit. But it didn't need to be. It was a spark. He kept going. Writing. Recording. Touring while still shooting for the show. Balancing rehearsals with sound checks. Makeup chairs with green rooms. She was a teenager living two lives. The bright Disney star by day and the introspective songwriter by night. By 2015 her debut album released. Then came Evolution. An album that hinted at a deeper, bolder side of her. She wasn't just singing bubblegum pop anymore. Her voice was maturing. Her lyrics sharper. Songs like Thumbs showed off her vocal strength and social commentary. People started noticing. But with fame came pressure. The comparisons were endless. To Taylor, to Selena, to every other girl trying to break out of the Disney mold. But Sabrina didn't want to be anyone else. She didn't want to fit into pop's narrow box. She leaned into her individuality. Into the feelings that didn't always rhyme. Into the heartbreak that didn't always resolve. Into the questions with no answers. By 2019 she had already released multiple albums, performed on major stages and grown a loyal fan base. But still she felt underestimated. Then came the noise. The public drama. Headlines about love triangles. Fans speculating. Comment sections exploding. And through it all Sabrina stayed quiet. She didn't respond with tweets. She responded with art. In 2021 she released Skin. A bold, unapologetic track that tackled the whispers and the judgment head-on. It was emotional. Vulnerable. It showed the world she wasn't just a former Disney star. She was a woman with a voice and something to say. She started working with new producers, exploring new sounds. Blending indie pop with cinematic soul, acoustic textures with electronic beats. Her songwriting evolved into poetry. Confessional. Her latest work? It's not just music. It's memoir. Drenched in feeling. Wrapped in melody. She's no longer the girl covering Adele in her bedroom. She's the woman selling out shows, commanding stages, and writing every lyric with the same fire she had when she was 10. Sabrina Carpenter's journey wasn't meteoric. It was earned. One audition. One cover. One heartbreak at a time. And the best part? She's just getting started. Sabrina may have looked like a bright, smiling star on the outside, but internally she was often caught in a quiet war. One that rarely showed in the spotlight. She was the kind of daughter who never wanted to disappoint. Even as a child she was hyper-aware of how much her parents were sacrificing for her dreams. Every dance class, vocal coach session and acting audition wasn't just an opportunity. It was an investment. And she felt the weight of that. At home she was soft-spoken and thoughtful. Her sisters would say she was the dreamer. Always scribbling lyrics in the margins of her notebooks. Always humming a melody under her breath, even during dinner. But that dreamer also had doubts. In the quiet moments, in hotel rooms between press tours or backstage before a big show, she would sometimes wonder if she was really good enough. If the love she was getting was for her. Or for the character she played. As a musician she was restless. Not in a negative way, but in a searching kind of way. While many pop artists were content to chase the latest trends, Sabrina was digging deeper. He didn't just want to write songs that sounded good. He wanted to write songs that meant something, that told the truth, that hurt a little. Music was never just a job for her. It was a lifeline, a way to make sense of emotions that couldn't be spoken directly, a place where she could be vulnerable even if the world was watching. And while her early albums leaned into the polished pop sound the industry expected from Disney stars, her personal journal told a different story. It was full of lyrics she wasn't sure anyone would ever hear, raw, sharp, often poetic in their simplicity. Songs about unspoken heartbreak, jealousy, self-worth, and navigating life in the shadow of other people's expectations. The turning point came when she realized, if I keep trying to be what everyone wants me to be, I'll lose who I actually am. This wasn't a sudden epiphany, it was a slow build. It came from the countless times she had to smile through interviews that asked the same 5 surface-level questions. From the pressure to stay sweet, in an industry that often punished young women for growing up, for speaking out, for being too real. So she started saying no more often. No to songs that didn't resonate. No to roles that felt one-dimensional. No to appearances that required her to shrink herself to fit into a version of Sabrina that no longer existed. And slowly she began saying yes to herself. She wrote more. She began co-producing her tracks. She took long drives just to clear her head and think about the kind of legacy she wanted to build. She watched old documentaries about artists who defied the mold. Stevie Nicks, Alanis Morissette, Lorde, women who were unapologetically themselves. But more than anything, she leaned into the why behind it all. Why music? Why the spotlight? Why push through when it got tough? The answer always came back to connection. Because when someone sent her a message saying, "Your song helped me through my breakup," or, "I didn't feel alone after I heard that lyric," or, "You said exactly what I couldn't say out loud," that's when it all made sense. That's when the late nights in the studio, the anxiety before live performances, the criticism, it all became worth it. Her inner world wasn't perfect. She had imposter syndrome. She second-guessed herself. She wrestled with comparisons, especially in an age of social media where everyone's highlight reel was always on display. But she never let those doubts win. Instead, she turned them into art, into stories, into songs that echoed in the hearts of people going through their own silent battles. She started to see herself not just as a performer, but as a mirror, reflecting back emotions that others didn't know how to name. And with that shift in perspective, her power grew. Because now she wasn't just chasing fame. She was building something lasting. Something that mattered. Something rooted not in perfection, but in truth. By the time Sabrina Carpenter turned 18, she had already achieved what many only dream of. A starring role on Disney Channel's Girl Meets World, multiple EPs under her belt, and a growing social media following. But success wasn't as sparkly as it looked. Behind the camera flashes and perfectly curated Instagram grids, Sabrina was at a crossroads. She was no longer the teenage girl with the golden curls and wide-eyed innocence. She was growing. Her voice was changing, literally and metaphorically. She wanted to write her truth, not just recite words handed to her. But every time she tried to evolve publicly, someone would remind her, "Stay in your lane. Be safe. Be sweet." The world had seen her as the quirky best friend, the safe pop princess, but not as an artist with depth. And that broke her. She'd go into sessions with producers who only wanted to replicate what worked for someone else, not what lived inside her. She would write lyrics late at night in her journal, about heartbreak, about identity, about jealousy, rage, and confusion. But she'd often keep them to herself, afraid people would say she was too much. Then came the Skin era, and everything changed. It was 2021, and suddenly her name was being splashed across headlines not for her music, but for a rumored love triangle. The internet turned her personal life into a meme. The hate poured in like a storm. She was accused, dismissed, misunderstood. And for a brief moment she considered going silent. But instead she walked straight into the fire. She released Skin not as a PR move, but as a declaration that she would no longer be written into someone else's narrative. The song wasn't a diss track. It was an artistic act of reclaiming her voice. The world listened. And for the first time many really heard her. The song charted on Billboard. She performed it live with raw emotion, trembling but powerful. From that moment on, something clicked inside her. She wasn't going to make herself smaller to keep others comfortable. She leaned into the chaos and turned it into creativity. Her next album, Emails I Can't Send, was a diary turned into music. Each song peeled back layers. Her relationship with her father, her struggles with self-worth, her heartbreaks, her humor, her contradictions. She wrote, she cried, she laughed, she screamed. And she let all of it live inside the music. She stopped chasing perfection and embraced personality. And slowly something magical happened. Audiences started to connect, not with the perfectly polished Disney image of Sabrina, but with the real her. The woman who could belt a power note, then drop a sarcastic one-liner. Who could sing about anxiety and still sell out shows. She wasn't boxed in anymore. She was breaking out. From late-night talk show performances that went viral, to TikTok snippets that people quoted like gospel, Sabrina was finally having a moment. And it was on her terms. But the pressure only got higher. At every step she faced comparison, especially with pop icons who had millions more fans and decades more fame. People whispered, "She's good but not there yet." Sabrina didn't argue back. She worked. She toured. She rehearsed until midnight. She rewrote songs again and again. She learned how to direct music videos. She crafted visuals that matched her sonic growth. She built a team that believed in her long game. And while others coasted on viral fame, Sabrina built something real. And when she opened for Taylor Swift's Eras tour, she wasn't just opening acts, she was opening eyes. Here was a girl once boxed in by industry labels, now commanding stadiums unapologetically herself. She had walked through the fire of internet hate, industry pressure, and personal heartache, and came out not just alive but evolved. She had turned the chaos into clarity, the pain into poetry, the noise into music. This was no longer about proving she belonged. It was about owning the fact that she does. But even as the world began to take her seriously as an artist, Sabrina felt the weight of constantly being one step behind the respect she knew she deserved. Every win came with a whisper, "Yeah, but she was a Disney girl." Every performance, every interview, every lyric, dissected. People didn't want her to speak up too loudly or write too honestly or dare to be too bold. There was a pressure to be polished, to be palatable, to stay in the narrow lane the industry had carved out for her. But Sabrina was never meant to stay in one lane. She was writing songs that didn't just sound good, they felt like something. Because I Liked a Boy wasn't just a track, it was an open wound. She poured the raw confusion and pain of being vilified for a relationship she never publicly confirmed or denied, and turned it into art. It was sharp, clever, unfiltered, and it hit like a storm. That song wasn't just a clapback, it was a turning point. She wasn't asking for sympathy. She was showing people what it means to have your identity publicly dismantled, and still choose to write your truth anyway. And that choice made her powerful. During her Emails I Can't Send tour, Sabrina turned heartbreak into theater. Every stage was a confession booth, every note a line from the diary she'd once been afraid to share. She wore mini dresses and combat boots, switching between piano ballads and pop anthems like it was second nature, because for her it was. She began controlling her narrative, not with statements to the press, but with songwriting that left nothing off the table. Fans cried during her acoustic sets and danced during her most irreverent songs. She built a space where her audience felt seen, because she wasn't pretending to be above them. She was with them, in the mess, in the growth, in the uncertainty. And when critics asked, "Is she really a pop star?" she didn't answer with words. She answered with the work. She sold out tours in multiple continents. She booked performances on some of the world's biggest stages. She landed campaigns and covers not because of hype but because of consistency. And slowly, those same critics started changing their tone. They weren't just reviewing her albums. They were respecting them. Because the truth was undeniable. Sabrina Carpenter wasn't riding anyone's wave. She was building her own ocean. She was redefining what it meant to come from Disney, not to escape it but to evolve beyond it. She became the voice for every girl who was once underestimated, for every young woman told to be nice, when she wanted to be real. And that was the beauty of her climb. It wasn't flashy or overnight. It was earned. Layer by layer. Song by song. Scar by scar. Sabrina Carpenter stood backstage at one of her biggest shows yet, the crowd humming with anticipation. Thousands of voices echoing her name. It was a far cry from the girl who once sang into a hairbrush in her parents' Pennsylvania home. And yet in that moment she didn't just feel proud. She felt aligned. Because the road here hadn't been smooth. It had been messy, winding, and often lonely. But it was hers. And now, standing on a stage built from grit and heartbreak and stubborn belief, she knew exactly who she was. Sabrina's resolution didn't come from a single moment of fame. It came from years of layering lessons. Each mistake, each setback, each moment of silence that came after a release that didn't chart the way she'd hoped. But every low taught her something deeper. She began to realize that fame, for its glitter and noise, wasn't the destination. Fulfillment was. She stopped chasing trends. She stopped writing for approval. She started writing for truth. Sabrina's music began to shift. Songs like Because I Liked a Boy didn't just show her vocal range. They revealed her soul. She was no longer a teenage pop puppet. She was a woman using melody to process, to heal, and to connect. The media had often painted her into a corner, labeling her as someone's ex, someone's competition, someone caught in the middle. But she used that narrative, flipped it, and turned it into art. Instead of defending herself online, she wrote lyrics that made people cry in their bedrooms, sing at the top of their lungs in their cars, and feel seen when they hadn't felt seen in years. Behind the scenes she was also changing. She built a team she trusted. She began managing more of her own business decisions. She learned how to read contracts, how to negotiate tour deals, and how to say no to things that didn't serve her. She found joy in the smallest details, like choosing the lighting for her music video shoots or designing the intro transitions for her stage performances. She became a true artist in every sense. No longer just a voice, but a vision. She also started mentoring younger artists. Some of them had grown up watching her on Disney. They came to her confused, anxious, unsure about their futures. And Sabrina told them the truth. That fame doesn't fix fear. That you can be loved by millions and still feel alone. That the only way to really make it is to know who you are before the world tells you who to be. And perhaps one of the most powerful things she did. She forgave herself. For the songs that didn't chart. For the times she stayed silent. For the moments when she compared her journey to others and felt like she was behind. She stopped measuring success by magazine covers or Instagram followers. Instead, she measured it by meaning. By how she felt after leaving the studio. By the emails from fans who said her lyrics helped them survive heartbreak or self-doubt. By the peace she felt when she walked off stage, knowing she gave it everything. Sabrina began embracing a new kind of rhythm, not just musically but in life. She prioritized rest, reflection, real relationships. She made space for joy, for laughter, for quiet. And from that space she created even more powerful art. She wrote an album not for the charts but for the soul. A collection of songs that didn't just entertain, they healed. She collaborated with writers and producers who understood her emotionally, not just professionally. She created visuals that were bold, raw, unapologetic. And the world responded. The same critics who once dismissed her began to write new headlines. Industry executives who once overlooked her now wanted meetings. But she didn't need validation anymore. She had already validated herself. She understood something many never do. That staying in the game long enough to grow into your voice is the real win. That slow burns last longer than fast flames. Sabrina Carpenter became not just a successful artist, but a symbol of what it means to evolve. To survive the noise without losing the music inside. Her story became a lighthouse for young women navigating industries that try to shrink them. She showed that resilience doesn't have to be loud. That sometimes the most rebellious thing you can do is simply stay the course. And what's more, she still had so much ahead of her. Because even after the awards, the sold-out tours, the viral hits, she remained curious. Still willing to learn. Still willing to listen. Still willing to be new at something. She knew that true greatness wasn't in being the best. It was in being better than you were yesterday. And maybe that's the biggest lesson her story holds. That you don't need to peak early. You don't need to have it all figured out by 22. You just need to be brave enough to keep showing up. To keep writing. To keep evolving. Because that's what Sabrina did. And now she wakes up with clarity. She sings not because she has to, but because she wants to. She lives not for headlines but for harmony. And in doing so she's become more than a pop star. She's become a voice. A light. A reminder that sometimes, the most powerful thing you can be is yourself. If Sabrina's story inspired you, follow this channel now. Every week, we uncover the real journeys behind today's most powerful artists and creators. No fluff, just truth. Drop a comment below about your own dream or struggle. This is your safe space. This is where your story begins. Let's keep building together.